Welcome to the Generation Cedar podcast. I'm Kelly Crawford, wife and homeschooling mom to 11. You have come to the right place if you crave to live and parent with purpose and need encouragement and inspiration to do your most important job, raising kids for the kingdom. Join me here every other Monday for your short, powerful shot in the arm. Let's dive into today's episode. Have you ever been so broke that you were looking for gas money under the couch cushions? We have, and in today's episode, I'm going to talk very practical tips and strategies we used to get out of debt while living on one income. So let's dive in. There was a time when toilet paper was not a precious commodity, and people actually strung it up on the trees and bushes of their friends' houses for fun. And one day I went outside and collected the toilet paper off of our bushes because someone had TP'd or rolled our yard, and I put it in a basket. And y'all, I set that basket right beside the toilet. And I'm going to show you, I have proof. I'm going to share my screen just for a second. And this is a real live picture of the actual toilet paper that I collected. So you might be thinking that only people in Alabama do such silly things, but that's not the case. We were just so broke. And I was determined to save money, much to my family's dismay, that I refused to waste anything. So today, about 15 years later, my husband and I have 11 children. We live on a farm where we bought 5 acres next to my parents in a 4,500 square foot home. It's our dream home. We've paid off nearly $40,000 worth of unsecured debt. And I've been a stay-at-home mom for the last 18 years, since the 3rd year of our marriage. When I quit my job 18 years ago, my husband made about $250 a week, and I was pregnant with our 3rd child. We also actually buy our toilet paper now, so if you were concerned about that, I can put your mind at rest when we can find it, that is. Financially speaking, we have defied all American odds. According to the general opinion, we can't even afford 11 children, much less on one income, much less with very little debt. But that is not how our story began. Our story began with a basket of toilet paper because we were in desperate financial distress. It was a time when we couldn't afford to buy fruit. When paper towels were a luxury I would never consider purchasing. It was a time I prayed desperately that the power company would give us a little bit longer, even longer than the 3 weeks our bill was already overdue. Our journey to paying off debt and living on one income with a very bad start, but I'm going to try to share as briefly as I can some of the powerful and practical things that we learned along the way, hoping to encourage you, to remind you of the power and provision of God when we trust Him. And I want to give you hope, and I want to help you if you're struggling with income or your financial goals, or if you're trying to make a decision about maybe coming home from work. Now, as I said, we were broke for a very long time, and I've learned that broke means different things to different people. I have a friend who recently used the term broke, but they have money in their savings account. She used the term broke and savings account in the same sentence. And I'm like, sister, that is not the kind of broke that I'm talking about. Our broke was digging under couch cushions looking for change to buy gas to drive to church. And here's how it started. We both got married when we were pretty young. We both brought debt into our marriage. We both worked like most couples. We had very moderate, fairly low-paying jobs. I was a school teacher at a Christian school, and the second year I was there, I just felt the Lord called me home. I wanted desperately to be home with my children. I was expecting our 3rd child, and the problem was my husband at the time, he made $25,000 a year, and we were about to be a family of 5. And I believe our stamina in our decision for me to come home was fueled by just a solid conviction that that's what God wanted me to do. My husband was in complete agreement. It did not make sense on paper for that to happen. We were not basing our decision off of a rational, clearly defined financial plan. It just really didn't make sense. But we trusted him to do something miraculous. And people thought we were crazy. We kind of questioned our sanity. But we marched forward and decided to make that decision. Right about the same time that happened, the Lord was challenging us to give him control over our family size. And I'll tell you, it didn't feel like the greatest timing. Nevertheless, here we are taking our second leap of faith. So we were waiting on our miracle, waiting to see how God's going to reward our faith and, wait to see what he's going to do. We were hopeful. And so then a few weeks later, maybe days, we got word that my husband was laid off of his job. Not exactly the miracle we were hoping for. So here we were, completely jobless, expecting our third baby. And one of the things that I hope you're encouraged by is that God's timetable is very different from ours. At this point, you can imagine how discouraged we were, but he was doing something bigger. We could not see it. We would have to trust him more. We would have to continue walking in faith. What he was doing was going to take a lot longer. Learning to wait on him has been a painful but wonderful process. My husband had thought about starting a landscaping business previously. So without any capital, which is a terrible way to start a business, he launched his landscaping company. And of course, the business struggled because of the lack of preparation and money that we had. And within a year, we had started having to live off of credit cards, and we accrued a debt of almost $40,000 within a year. So, of course, once you get behind, you get more and more behind, you get more discouraged. And after I had had countless creditors call and threaten, and there was starting to be stress on our marriage, we could not pay our bills, we just got mad enough to fight it. And I remember my husband going to our church for counseling, and thankfully, some wise men spoke hard words to him and then handed him a copy of Dave Ramsey's book, Finding Financial Freedom. Maybe that was it, which was exactly the motivation we needed. And we got busy. We got busy making money and saving money, because that's how you pull yourself out of debt. Our first goal was to start paying off debt with the smallest debt at a time. And some people recommend the smallest interest, but Dave Ramsey wisely recommends the smallest balance. And the reason is because when you're in financial crises like this, it's very important to stay emotionally motivated. And so the sooner you can pay off one of those balances and get that motivation you need to keep going, the better. My husband picked up extra jobs here and there along the way. He delivered pizza. He worked at night waiting tables. This was in addition to his regular job. He ended up getting another job. And he even, one season in our lives, picked up a job where he got up at 4 a.m. and would go to a chicken farm nearby and pick up the dead chickens, which had to be done, before he went to his regular job. And, I'm just still so thankful for his willingness to provide for us and do whatever he needed to do. So while he was working tirelessly, I decided to save as hard as I could. And it became like a sport for me to see how much I could save on my end. And I've learned something about money, and I call it magic money. Whether you're spending money or saving money, we tend to think that unless it's a lot at one time, it really doesn't amount to much. So we don't think much of spending a few dollars here, a few dollars there, and the same, we don't think that saving here and there a few dollars really makes a difference. It's my theory that this is why most people are in financial trouble. The truth is, money multiplies very quickly with small, steady savings, and it also leaves very quickly with small, steady spending, almost like magic. So what we need to do is get into the habit of recognizing the value in small savings, knowing that habit, the small savings multiplied over hundreds and hundreds of ways, could quickly add up to a lot. So an example might be turning our ketchup bottle upside down to drain the last bit of ketchup out. And then if you can't get the last bit out, you add a little water and use it in a soup. Just thinking about using every ounce of your consumable products, or saving your plastic bread bags to put your husband's lunch in instead of buying Ziploc bags, you, taping something up instead of going to buy a new one that needs, something that needs repaired, just saving leftovers so that you can use those in soup later. Anything that you can think of to be frugal and that will save a little bit of money. And if you want to see how it works, the spending part, keep track of every expense, no matter how small, and it's easy to see how fast that goes in a short time. So I'm just going to share a few ways that we tried to save during this time. The first thing I did was I called all of my utility companies and just asked them if there were ways that our bill could be adjusted. And I was surprised to find out that a couple of them actually said, yes, you're eligible for a reduction or this discount. They don't call you to tell you that, but sometimes if you call them, you find out that that's available. We hung a clothesline up and started to use that instead of a dryer. We adjusted our hot water heater, turned it down, and we actually had a time where we would turn it off and turn it back on, turn it off during the times of the day that we weren't using it as much. And that saves about, I want to say the percentage on that is around 15% on your water bill. I could be quoting that wrong, but I think I've read that. We try to keep our thermostats adjusted a little higher in the summer, a little lower in the winter. We just did everything we could to find ways to save. In the food department, until you've been down to survival mode, praying for daily bread isn't something that we're accustomed to doing. But I can tell you that our children witnessed us the most humbled during this time before the throne of God when we were the most desperate. And one of the greatest blessings of our circumstances was just the opportunity that all of us got to see of God providing for us. And while sometimes it felt like he wasn't providing enough, on this side of it, I can say we made it. We never went hungry. We never went without power or water. We always had our basic needs met, sometimes in miraculous ways. More importantly, we got to know intimately our provider in a way we never would have known during times of plenty. So I am thankful for this season. Practically speaking, I felt like our food budget was one of the most flexible areas for saving money, and something that would inspire me is calculating the average price of a given meal, especially if I compared it to what it would cost us to eat out. So I'll just mention a few things. I may be saying things that you already do, so hopefully I can give you some ideas. We ate a lot of soup. Soup is an inexpensive food that you can stretch and use a lot of leftovers, use more meat or more beans or more pasta and less, I meant to say less meat, more beans, pasta, and fillers like that. You can make a really great soup to feed a large amount of people for $5 or so, and maybe even have leftovers. We would ration certain foods. For example, if a recipe called for an onion, we would use half an onion. Recipe called for pepper, we would use half a pepper. So just basic, simple things like that. I would do two or three meals a week that were meatless, where we would just have a heavy, more vegetables and pasta or something, or considered our meat more as a side dish, so we would just serve less of it. We planted a garden, used a lot of food out of our garden, and we have a really great discount grocery store that is just amazing. That if it's worth looking for one in your area if you don't have one already. Just yesterday, I bought raspberries, the larger containers, not the small, large, for 50 cents, and they were delicious. So using our discount store was a huge blessing to us. Cooking from scratch, of course, that's a given when you're in desperate times, making refried beans instead of buying them, or making your own sauces, or just a lot of things, a lot of ways you can save money. In the kitchen, a good strategy for planning meals too is not to plan meals and go buy your ingredients, but to go buy what is on sale and plan your meals around that. And that's something we tried to do. On the rare occasion that we ate out, and we didn't do that very much, there are ways that you can do it economically, especially if you have, a considerable number of smaller children. I remember one particular night we went to a seafood restaurant, and they had a large platter, and it was $18, and we bought that platter. All of us ate from it, and we were full. We drank water, of course. And so for $18, our family of whatever it was at that time, 7 or 8, got to enjoy a meal out. So that was fun. And then, of course, thrift store shopping was huge, still is huge in our home, but we always would go thrift store shopping, and we found fantastic clothes for our family instead of having to pay retail price. And another thing here, God was so faithful to provide for us. We had, oftentimes friends would give us clothes that were practically new, nicer than I probably would have bought for us. For years, we hardly had to buy some of our kids any clothes because of that. And so just over and over, we saw his hand and the way he would provide and bless us. So we cannot underestimate his promises to us not to worry, and his admonition to not worry about food and clothing. He says, I know you need these things. I will take care of you. And I've seen him do it over and over. And here's another secret to spending less: staying home. You'll always spend less and you'll become more creative. And I would imagine that this season of quarantine has taught this lesson well for people, but it's just kind of a simple thing that the more you stay home, the more you save. I learned during that time how to save money shopping online. I bought contacts online. I bought computer ink. Almost anything you can think of, you can usually find at a discount online. Even, if you buy things in bulk, maybe Christmas gifts or things like that you can think of. Lots of savings to be had there. If you're homeschooling, which I assumed most of you watching are, there is one website called All-in-One Homeschooling. You can it provides curriculum from kindergarten to 12th grade, completely free. Everything, all the reading, everything that they offer is provided there. It's just a link that they click. It takes them to their resources. Khan Academy is a free resource on YouTube that teaches a number of subjects if you want to save money there. Of course, there's always the library. Thrift stores have lots of good textbooks, so a lot of savings to be had. You don't have to go out and buy a curriculum. In the area of gifts, I found there was a lot of savings to be had there. And this became really one of our favorite places to save money. And it's one of the places I worked the hardest. And it really created a hunger in our children to learn to be productive and creative. Several of my children now even have their own businesses. And I feel like it's because of the way this need to create changed our family. So the necessity to create gifts is what ultimately opened the door to an incredible opportunity that is still a very important part of our lives, and I'll explain about that in a bit. But I wanted to show you a few of the gifts we made over time, and some of these are what my children made, so maybe just to give you some inspiration. I picked these because they're pretty easy. I know many of you might not think you're crafty or whatever, but over the years that we've dabbled in crafts and making all sort of things, we've learned that there are some, especially with Pinterest, some good, easy tutorials that you can follow. We even started an Etsy shop with one of these ideas that has gotten us through a season when my husband was in surgery and out of work. So I'm going to pan over and show you. Bear with me just a second. I'm going to share my screen with you. So the first thing we did was these personalized stationaries. Let me click larger here. Personalized stationery, which we simply printed designs off of the computer. We bought the cards in bulk at a craft discount store using a coupon, and then just divided them into 6 or 8 cards in a pack, tied them with ribbon. See, you can pair it in a basket with stamps or personalized, notebooks or pins. They make a really cute and thoughtful gift. The second thing we did was we made lots of candles. This is just one of the examples. We made this out of an orange juice container. We collected those and asked friends to collect their leftover candle wax. And we just made the candles with leftover wicks, and then at the end we take the leaves and with a paintbrush just brushed hot wax over the leaves, and so that's how we created that effect. And people loved these, so very, very easy. I don't think we had any money in these whatsoever. Homemade bread, homemade jam, uh, you know, packaged in a cute package is always a very welcome and thoughtful gift. This was a project that my children did, and my son, who's an artist, he was probably 10 or 12 at the time, I think, drew these pictures. I just bought the transfer paper from Walmart, ran them through my printer, and it was an iron-on transfer, and then my daughter made the bags, and so those turned out really cute. This was this mosaic pot. My husband came home one day with a bunch of broken tile pieces and asked me if I wanted them, and so I instantly thought about doing some things like this. We did a number of mosaic tile projects, but this one just had some of our homemade skin products, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a little bit, but it was one of the first businesses we started. So these made really nice gifts for not very much money. These pillows, my daughter made these. When my oldest daughter got married, we had ordered, these are actually made out of painter's drop cloth. We'd ordered those online, very inexpensive, you know, very large cloths. And so after the wedding, we were deciding what to do, and so we had the idea to make these pillows, and all she did was stencil them with Sharpie marker. So they actually turned out really well, and she ended up having people request them, so she sold several of those. She also had an Etsy shop where she sold these, and these are easy to make as well. You simply take your image and copy it onto tissue paper, and then cut the tissue paper and just brush it on with a Mod Podge glue, Mod Podge, and that's it. And so they make really, really cute gifts. You can personalize them and do whatever designs. Washer necklaces were a big hit one summer when we went to a craft fair. My daughter made these. Easy to make. The tutorial for these is on my website. If you want to just go to my website at Generation Cedar and type in washer necklace in the search bar, and it should come up. Very cute, very inexpensive, and super fun as well. And this is the item that we actually ended up opening an Etsy shop for. It does really well at Christmas time and has gotten us through, you know, times when my husband has had to be out of work for surgery. Also very simple, because all you do is print out your design onto wax paper in your printer, and then the wax paper just transfers it straight to the board, and you just then spray it with a sealer. These are some of our very first skin care products, like I said, and I'll tell you about how I did that. I got into that a little later, but we had a lot of fun making these, and we had this business for about 6 years, but it started out as just gifts for Christmas, and we really, really enjoyed making those. And when you buy, you know, in large quantities, buy your ingredients, it ends up being very economical. And this is our most recent. We actually made these about 2 or 3 weeks ago during quarantine. I bought these supplies, and we sat down and just had such a great time that my daughter decided to make and sell these as well. And so she has made several $100s so far since she's been out of work, and has also just enjoyed doing them. So that, just wanted to give you a few ideas for inspiration. The amazing hardship that we went through, it was truly, I believe, a catalyst in who we became as a family. And if I can just show you for a minute how God connected the dots. I mentioned the skin product business we started. It was Christmas time, and I wanted to give gifts to people, and we just didn't have a lot of money. And so I bought up a few ingredients and looked up some recipes online for how to make some skin products, natural skin products. And I really enjoyed making them, and people loved them, and they were really great. And so I decided while I was doing that, you know, I could probably sell these. So took a little bit of money that we had, bought some additional containers and stickers and things like that, and I started selling them at local craft stores. Or I guess more fairs. I did go to some craft stores, but more just craft fairs. People loved it. And so I was thinking through, you know, how could I sell these in a broader space? And this is probably early, mid-90s, I guess. My brother, he said, Kelly, you should start a blog. You love to write, and it would be a good platform for you to sell your products. I really didn't even know what a blog was. I honestly had not heard of one at the time. So I started looking into it, got really excited about it. And so that began my blog, which is now, I've been writing for 13 years, generationcedar.com. And not only did it become a platform for us to earn money by selling the skin products then, and now we've added, ebooks and all sorts of things, but it allowed me to fulfill one of my greatest passions. I had always had a dream about being a writer, and really I was interested in copywriting. And the blog opened up the opportunity to do that. And that even led to now I work from home in graphic design, something I didn't even know I was interested in. And it also opened doors, for example, for me to be able to speak in situations like this and share with other people what God has done for me. So it was just looking back and seeing how that hardship became a catalyst that God used to open up all these different doors. Um, and he would not only use it in those ways, but the blog would become important in another way that I'll tell you about in just a little bit as I round out the story. So anyway, I would encourage you to know he does work in mysterious, miraculous ways. And sometimes it is in the deepest part of our pain that he may be doing something miraculous. So not only was I trying to save money through all that, but we tried to think of different ways my kids and I from home could make money. And that's when I started selling on eBay. I sold books. I sold household things. It was my first attempt at online selling, and it was very exciting to be able to make money from, things just lying around the house. In fact, at the time I had just had a baby, and I don't know if you get in the when I would have babies, I would get in the mailbox coupons, $5 off for formula for whatever. And I didn't use the formula, so I would put the coupons up for sale on eBay, and believe it or not, people would buy them for just a few pennies less than the coupon itself. And I just stuck it in an envelope, with the stamp. And so, I was selling everything. If it wasn't nailed down, I was selling it. Another thing we did was we started selling baked goods, pies, things like that to the neighbors. We just would bake up a bunch. This works especially well around holidays, Thanksgiving. And we just go up and down the neighborhood and sell pies, pecan pies, sweet potato pies, and they loved it. They actually would call us for more when we ran out. So, of course, we had yard sales, and I looked into becoming an affiliate seller on Amazon, and that's an easy something that you might want to check into if you're looking for additional ways to make income. And just like every circumstance, we never can see what God is fully doing. And that's what makes our wisdom so dangerous. So we kept working on our consumer debt for several years and had it all paid off, nickel and diming it, except we were down to about $600 left. And not only did he give us a wealth of invaluable lessons along this journey, but we definitely would not have chosen them, but he gave me the desires of my heart when I chose to stay home. He gave me the writing and the marketing outlet I mentioned on the blog, through the blog. But just before we paid off the last of our debt, tragedy struck. And it was something else we never would have chosen that would turn out to be the most miraculous work we had seen yet in our lives. And I have to share a few details so you can just see how God was weaving it all together. So bear with me because they're important to understanding. We had bought a double wide mobile home when we first got married, and we lived on my parents' property. We lived there for 8 years, started to grow out of it when we were expecting our 7th baby. It's a long story, but my parents, who run a boys' home, had a large unfinished house just next to us that had sat vacant for years. And we wanted so much to buy it, but we couldn't afford it. Our credit was the biggest problem, and even if we could have gotten around it, the debt for that kind of loan was just bigger than we were ready to buy it off. So my parents agreed to just let us rent it for a year or two until we could figure out a way to buy it. Well, the mobile home thing was just a thorn in our flesh. We paid on it for 8 years, but we had paid very little principal, and most everything had gone to interest. So here we were with this 8 or 9 year mobile home, still owing almost what we bought it for. And I had done research after research to see how we could possibly get out from under the debt of this mobile home. And at the end of my research, I found there was only one possible solution, and that was a natural disaster. And I'm telling the truth. I had looked into how we could sell it. It had depreciated too much to sell, looked in even if we put a permanent foundation, all of these different scenarios. Nothing was going to solve the problem. The only thing that would get us out from under it was a natural disaster. So I started praying for a tree to fall on the mobile home. That's all I prayed for, a tree. And I prayed faithfully that a tree would fall on our mobile home, because I said, Lord, we need to get out from under this debt, and that would just be such a blessing. Let us, at this time it was vacant, of course, so no one would get hurt. Well, in 2011, the most historical record-breaking tornado imaginable came through our community and wiped us off the map. It was an F5 tornado, half a mile wide. We lost friends, we lost neighbors, we lost our houses. My parents lost their house. We lost everything. I still get blamed for that tornado, for praying for a tree. So if you want me to pray for something for you, just shoot me an email, and just so you know. But we had no insurance on the house that we were renting, of course. Our mobile home is gone. Thank the Lord, the mobile home was gone. But here we were, homeless, with no insurance. After all these years, though, God was about to give us our miracle. With the blog, I mentioned earlier, another remarkable thing he would do, the blog being widely read, news got out very quickly and very extensively what had happened to us. And by the Lord's mercy, he sent people, he sent monetary gifts, he sent more than I can even tell you to come and help us. And long story short, we were able to rebuild our house debt-free through God's people, pay off the last of our debt, and of course, like I said, we were out from under the mobile home. That was the first question I asked my husband when he came from assessing the damage. I said, please tell me that mobile home is gone. So it's all God's grace, but looking back to see his hand in the way he worked out everything, it was a financial miracle beyond my wildest imagination. I would never have imagined that we would have been in that position. We've come full circle. And I've looked back over the years of a landscape where I did not know what God was doing, where things happen I never dreamed could work for our good. And yet I've seen his promises over and over in my life. My ways are not your ways. And I look at my children and I realize we may not have had most of them. If we had followed our hearts, if we had followed wisdom of others, because we couldn't afford them. And I'm overwhelmed at his goodness and his allowing me to see his hand in every tiny, painful detail of our lives. And so I just want to tell you, if you're in a valley, hang on. Keep walking, keep trusting, do your part, but know that he is working all things for your good, for his glory, and he wants to prove himself in your life. Let him. And I appreciate you listening. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening today. Hey, I'd love to hear from you. You can contact me through my blog at generationseeder.com or catch me on Facebook or Instagram. Tell me what has helped you, tell me what you'd like to hear, or just tell me your story. Until next time.